So, first of all, what is Love, Simon about? So, Love, Simon is about 17-year-old Simon Spears, who gets into a relationship. Hi, I'm Conan McKegg, and I love movies, in particular gay movies, and I've got a lot of them. So every week, I'm going to review a different gay movie, and discuss with you various ideas and thoughts that this movie brings up, as well as whether it's worth checking out or not. So why don't you join me and come out to the movies? Hi, Conan here again, and welcome to this week's episode of Out to the Movies. So, this week I am reviewing Love, Simon, based on popular demand on Twitter. So, today I shall give you a review and my thoughts on this extremely popular queer comedy. So, Love, Simon is about Simon Spears, a average cis white male guy, 17 years old, lives with a fairly liberal family in middle America. Simon has friends, he does well at school, but he has a secret. And when another kid at his school anonymously posts on a gossip blog for the school that he is gay, Simon starts developing a relationship with this anonymous gay kid called Blue. So Simon comes out to Blue as gay, and they start to have a email pal relationship, even though neither of them actually know who the other is. Along comes Martin, a schoolmate of Simon's, who finds out about the emails and uses them to try and blackmail Simon into setting Martin up with Simon's attractive, very popular friend, Abby. And thus, it's the basis of the film. So, Love, Simon is a coming-of-age film, and it is very, very popular as a romantic comedy. But my feelings of this film is that romantic comedy is not really an accurate term to describe Love, Simon. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail shortly. Let's have a talk about some of the technical aspects first. Soundtrack-wise, beautifully modern soundtrack. It's got some great songs. The composition is really good on the instrumental work in the film and does a really good job of helping us sort of get the feeling of where Simon's at in a really kind of upbeat modern way. I can totally see why this film is popular with its target age demographic. It's just totally speaking to them, and I think that's great. My feeling about Love, Simon's strengths are that this is one of 3 films that I've seen in the last year that feel to me like while they are appealing to queer audiences and gay audiences in particular, they're not really targeted at them. And that might sound a bit strange to all those gay kids and teens who just loved Love, Simon. And that is in no way meant to say that you're wrong for loving Love, Simon, because it is also directed to you as a gay audience, but really its strongest beats are all targeted at a straight audience. And that's an interesting juggling act that this film does. So, over the course of the film, Simon ends up having to come out. And really this is where the film's at its strongest, because in the scenes where Simon comes out, the film is less focused on Simon's mindset of coming out and more about showing us how to react to someone coming out. And that's why I say it feels like it's targeted a lot to a straight audience. Now, a lot of friends that I have who are gay, who love this film, also love these coming out scenes, because there is an attachment to those scenes. We know what Simon's going through. We know what Simon's fears are. So to the gay viewer, these scenes will play out in a kind of a, this is how I hoped coming out would have been for me. Whereas for a straight viewer, it probably comes across more of, when someone comes out, this is how you need to talk to them. Because every person that Simon comes out to gives an almost pitch-perfect response. And this is a good thing. The scenes with his parents are touching, they're emotional, they're so well acted, and the writing is just perfect. I just cannot fault these things in this film. It's just, you can see why this film touches so many people, and it's great. And this is really what Love, Simon is at its core, is it's about a kid who's in the closet who finds himself in a situation where he's having to come out, probably not when he thought he was ready for it. And it's about him processing through those feelings, and about how the people around him help him realize who he is and allow him to be who he is. And to a lot of gay teens, that is such an important message to get out there. And this is why one of the things I loved so much about this film and what's so beautiful about it. Having said that, what Love, Simon does have that I have an issue with is a little bit more complex. So let's just sort of dive into that complexity for a moment. Love, Simon's main issue probably comes from its structural problems. The film is not just a coming out story, and it's not just a coming of age story. It wants to be a romantic comedy as well. And it certainly gets the comedy. There are some wonderful little bits of comedy, just great witticisms. It really does a nice job of balancing those two things out, because it's so easy to get too maudlin and caught up in the emotional stuff that you drop the jokes, or to get too jokey that it never kind of lands. And for the most part, Love, Simon does a really good job of bouncing between the touching emotional moments and the witty funny moments. But what it doesn't really nail is romance. And that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, let's look at the actual plot structure. So at the core of the story, Simon has a guy called Blue that he's interested in, but he doesn't know who Blue is. His only contact with Blue is through emails. So throughout the film, Simon is interacting with Blue through emails, which is already a really difficult thing to pull off in a cinema. Now, if you've read the book, there's a very different way that this is dealt with. And it's far easier in a book to have characters interacting through correspondence that's written. I'm going to try and avoid drawing too many comparisons to the book, because I feel that this should be a review about the film and how it stands on its own, and not to worry too much about the what the book does that the film does different. So let's just focus on the film. In the film, the decision is made to make this kind of a bit of a mystery film. So we know that Simon likes Blue, and we know that Blue is gay and goes to the same school as Simon. So the way that we experience the correspondence between these two is through voiceovers. At the beginning, Blue is voiced over by a kind of a generic all-American guy voice. And then as Simon begins to suspect different people in his life, those people then do the voiceover of Blue's writing until such time that Simon realizes that they're not Blue, and he moves on to his next suspect as to who Blue might be. Now, this makes for a really intriguing, engaging storyline in that we've got Simon kind of being attracted to this character, but also not knowing who he is. But the problem with that is that then Simon never develops a chemistry with Blue, because every single person who reads for Blue is bringing their character's voice to Blue. So it changes the way Blue's words read. And so what this means is that we never get a feeling for who Blue is as a person, because we're getting Simon's imagination of who Blue is based on his assumption of who Blue is. And this means that there's never really any spark. And sometimes I'm left wondering, why does Simon think that Blue is interested in him? And it kind of robs Blue a bit as a character of any kind of agency in the film. The film becomes about Simon's obsession with Blue and Simon's attempts to protect Blue's identity due to the blackmail, which means that if Simon's outed, there's a chance Blue will get outed. And so we're so wrapped up in Simon's mystery that we don't actually really get Blue. And the other problem is, of course, that because the film wants to keep Blue a mystery, Blue has to hold back pieces of information that would actually be critical in identifying him. And while in a book you can control that information and how that information is delivered about other characters, they have to be more careful in the film, because if Blue gives away too much of a clue about himself, then the audience is going to figure out who Blue is well before Simon does. And then that makes Simon look kind of a bit dim. And we can't have that, because Simon's the protagonist. So he can't ever come across like he's deliberately ignoring obvious clues. So this creates quite a challenge structurally for the film to generate any kind of genuine romantic storyline and have a mystery at the same time. And personally, for me, I think it was a mistake to make the mystery more important than the romance. I think the really Love, Simon is not about Simon figuring out who Blue is. That's not even a B plot to the story. It doesn't really matter, because what Love, Simon's trying to sort of say is that Simon and Blue's feelings for each other eventually give Blue the confidence to reveal himself to Simon, and that's how it should have played. And that's not really how a majority of the film plays. The majority of the film plays Blue, the mystery, and then at the very end tries to switch gears into Simon's relationship with Blue gives Blue the strength to come out to Simon. And I just don't feel it nails it. It just doesn't land the way that it was probably intended. It kind of feels almost a bit of an afterthought. And that's a shame, because the film does Simon's coming out so well that it should have been able to do the other part as well. It's sort of wrapping this up. Love, Simon is a really good film. And that is the thing you need to take away most of all. It's not perfect. It doesn't really nail romance. I think there's an issue with any film that tries to tell you that romance is loving only one person and nobody else, and never being able to love anyone else ever again. Which I don't think was the goal of Love, Simon, but there are a couple of characters who essentially say that. And while that is probably meant to be playing off the teenage ideals of love, it's never really addressed in the film about how love is something that is more, I don't want to say you got to work at it, but it is definitely something that is constantly changing and evolving. And sometimes you fall out of love and sometimes you fall into love. But the idea of soulmate kind of characters, I think, is not helpful to teens who want a role model to look up to about how to have a healthy relationship. And I just sort of feel a little disappointed that the film kind of seems to go there. But that is probably being a little bit picky. And it is just a minor detail. I mean, it's not something that's exclusive to Love, Simon. This is something that crops up a lot in films, and you'll see out of the huge pile of films I have here, there are going to be other movies that I'll be bringing this stuff about as well. So don't consider that a negative against Love, Simon. It's just an observation. Overall, it's a good film, and even with my reservations about some things in the film, I've watched this 4 or 5 times, and I love it every time I watch it. Jennifer Garner she's just amazing. Her scene with Simon is so beautiful. And Josh Duhamel, I can never say it right. Duhamel. So Josh Duhamel does also a really good job as Simon's father. The coming out scenes just... they break you. They're so touching. And there's just a really warm generosity in this film that makes it, all its little flaws, just minor niggles in comparison to the main kind of thrust. But was it the best queer film I saw last year? No, not by a long shot. It was really good. It's really fun. I highly recommend it. As to which one I thought was the best, well, you'll just have to wait until next review.